Welcome back to another episode of our Wyckoff crypto discussion. As usual, today we will explore the crypto market through the lens of the Wyckoff method. We have received so many questions in the last weeks. Thank you very much for your feedback. I personally go through all of them. It's almost impossible to reply to all of your questions in just 20 minutes. So we have decided to have a special session late December totally devoted to your questions about the methodology. So basic principles, effort versus result, or just some questions about the crypto index and so on. So please continue to submit your questions, your candidates, and do not miss that episode. Today we are back with our usual market outlook. So this information is for educational purpose only, and it's not an investment recommendation. Please stop the video and read the disclaimer. So let's start with a weekly perspective. Bitcoin is breaking the all-time high. Supply has come in the last week, but as usual, every time we see supply coming in, we want to understand what's the result. And this is a weekly chart, so each bar is extremely important. What do we see here? Let's focus on the last down bar. The presence of supply here is not surprising at all, since the long-term resistance is a classic level where institutions that have bought into the bottom of the formation take profits into the strength. However, what we find really interesting here is the fact that the last down bar has a big demand tail, the spread is quite big, but we do not break below the low of the previous bar. These are elements of absorption, at least in the short term. What does it mean? New market participants are coming in, accepting higher prices. After a bar like this, we expect at least a retest of the high, and this is what we have seen in the last week. So if price is able to break above the high of the last bar, we could finally commit above the long-term resistance, which is in line with the scenario that we have described so many times in our Wyckoff crypto discussion. If price fails to commit above this level, this could be the beginning of a much longer consolidation. And when Bitcoin gets boring though, we always want to look for some rotation into the small cap sector, which is way more speculative than Bitcoin itself. So both scenarios are very interesting. And indeed, this is a weekly chart. We will see many nuances on the intraday too today. But before that, Roman, your thoughts?
So we want to think about this bar as an analog to something else. And basically, whenever you think about analogs, you're thinking, where else did this type of action has happened? So we definitely seen it at the beginning of the chart where we have the climactic run, which kind of starts to resemble, what we're seeing right now, with less of bullish characteristics, obviously, and then a big bar like this on a lot of volume. So something similar, but there are definitely differences. So what are the differences? This is a much larger spread. So there is more volatility, and more volatility usually suggests more of the distributional qualities. That's number one. Secondly, look at the recovery that we have on the current chart at the right portion of the chart. We recover instantly, and if we hold this weekly bar, into tomorrow's Friday, then and it's going to look like this, or maybe even slightly higher. We'll have to see. This is going to be much better recovery than what we've had right after. This distributional pattern. You could also think, if this is an interim position in the structure where there is an interim stop in action, you could use this analog right here. And also with that, you kind of could see how there is a tail on this second bar that actually goes below the low of the previous bar. So there is a little bit more pressure to the downside. There is no immediate recovery, attempt to recover, and then the close below. So this is the strongest analog that we're seeing of this particular price action. And therefore, that suggests what? That suggests that it might actually hold here. That's number one. And maybe even overcome all-time high, close above. And usually I would label this as kind of like this major sign of strength over the all-time high. And what is it going to do next? Backing up action. So with that, let's go to the daily and just seal the picture in a slightly different way. Alessio?
Yeah, so in the previous session, we have shown the early signs of a deterioration of the demand. We were anticipating a change of behavior. So let's quickly review the whole sequence. High volume at bar 1, an intraday penetration on the down bar at point 2, that shows a first deterioration of the demand, and then finally a lack of follow-through at point 3. Demand is tired. The reaction that we see at point 4 is a change of behavior. After change of behavior, we expect two scenarios, vertical absorption or a change of character. And historically, we will study some analogs with the previous bull run in next episodes. When Bitcoin is in markup mode, it's not unusual to see a lot of vertical absorption. Bitcoin is a high momentum instrument. But I think that this is a structural point where especially intraday traders must be very flexible. So we want to prepare more scenarios and then act on the confirmation points. So first scenario, Bitcoin consolidates here for a while, supply decreases on the top of this formation, and after that, a breakout would act as a confirmation for another push to the upside. Vertical absorption. Second scenario, supply is still present, and then we need to revisit the 17,000 level, so a larger consolidation could take place here. And this consolidation could have different shapes. For example, an apex, an upsloping formation, and so on. And yesterday, I was discussing many scenarios with Roman, and he sent me an interesting analog with an intraday chart of the Nasdaq with an upsloping consolidation. I really love that idea because we still have a lot of momentum on this move. But that said, we're just speculating about the nature of the consolidation. So if you are an intraday trader and you want to take advantage of this high volatility, you must follow the price action swing by swing. Your remarks, Roman.
Yeah, I really like this call that we made on the stop in action and the anticipation of the change of behavior. Why? Because this was more of the conditional call. Those are a little bit more difficult to make than, let's say, confirmatory calls or just structural calls and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to go into the difference between those. For those of you who really would like to know this, sign up for our classes, and we'll talk about this in classes in details. So anticipation was that there's going to be increase of the supply. There's going to be increase of the result to the downside. And then the biggest question is, what is going to happen afterwards? What kind of test we're going to have? So let's look how, the change of behavior unfolded. As we go down, what are we negating? We're negating the commitment to the upside that was having shortening of the thrust on the close. Another one, so both of them are being negated right away by this bar. And then we go into the body of this bar, which actually had a very good breakout. So this is where demand was the strongest out of all of those breakout bars. And what happens when the price comes to this area? We see an instant pickup in shares, instant increase in the demand signature, and that suggests buying, and that suggests institutional buying, and that suggests urgent institutional buying. So they still want to be in this position. Therefore, if that's the case, we're thinking that maybe with such a big momentum up, we're going to have continuation, and this smaller upthrust action confirms that. And obviously, the demand coming in on this bar as well, and on the next bar as well. Supply comes, and yet the price holds, and now holds above this big change of behavior bar. So if we are going to have some kind of stop in action here, which is kind of logical at 20,000 all-time high, How do we go through this? Supply comes in, supply comes in. We need to go through this absorption as we're kind of, having multiple attempts to go up. So I'm thinking, more of the upsloping attempt to go through this area where there are multiple up thrusts that are coming in into 20,000 and higher. Supply comes in, but every time supply diminishes, and we're still having some kind of higher lows. And then somewhere on the next attempt, supply is actually so exhausted that the price just, goes through. So we'll have to see what's going to happen, but it was a very interesting sequence.
So here we see a macro perspective that includes Bitcoin, US dollar, the Nasdaq, and the DeFi index. I think that this perspective is really interesting. So what do we see here? The Nasdaq is leading the market from March to September, then profit taking occurs, and we have this big consolidation. And Roman has discussed this apex formation countless times in our classes, in the Wyckoff trading course, the practicum, and the weekly discussion with Bruce. The DeFi index is the Nasdaq of crypto. Growth sector, very speculative. It was leading the market until September. Then profit taking has happened, and DeFi index, like the majority of the altcoins, has been consolidating almost in sync with the stock market, underperforming not just Bitcoin, but the whole market as well. So the composite man has taken profits in the most speculative DeFi sector, and capitals were rotating to Bitcoin, a very good play on the weakness of the dollar. Now the dollar is falling on a lack of demand, and we have just hit the mean of the channel, which is a very important level. So now we could accelerate to the bottom of the channel or just bounce here. We have to see. I think that this is a very interesting spot because any small counter move in the dollar could cause a significant profit taking Bitcoin. And when money leaves Bitcoin, it does not disappear. It can rotate back into the former leaders. And I think that even though the structure of the DeFi index has a lot of comparative weakness, the volume that we have seen on this index on the last rally in November is warning us that there is a lot of institutional participation again. And I really love the fact that the stock market is trying to break out this consolidation, and the altcoin sector is acting almost in sync. And we'll show today that many assets in the DeFi sector are already on the edge, already trying to break the resistance and picking up. So as we have said in the last episodes, the best signal for a rotation is a reaction Bitcoin, like a strong reaction, outperformance on the altcoin market, and so on. But I have a question for you. What happens if Bitcoin just stop here, and instead of having a strong correction, it just starts to consolidate for weeks and weeks, for example, in apex formation that we have just described? What can happen to all those coins that have been so aggressively bought in November? They will be quiet and dull like Bitcoin, or they will start to move to the upside from the very oversold levels where they are. I know that this is a very speculative scenario, but we always have to prepare this scenario because the crypto market is so fast. So Roman, what do you think here?
Yeah, interesting perspective that you're showing us, Alessio. Thank you for doing this. Definitely this comparison of the two kind of growth sectors and different asset classes is very interesting. What catches my eye a lot is this leg down with a lot of volume down that has on the way down some buying. So we see how the price stops, and this was the initial buy that they had. Then they're not doing anything. The volume signature is very, very low. And then look what happens next. This is very urgent attempt to buy. There is urgency to buy by institutions, obviously because of the institutional volume signature. And there is still a lot of supply in this area. How do we know this? Well, all of these reactions, they're just showing that there is selling. But yet, what is the result of this whole selling and buying? absorption because the price stays up. So, and this is suggestive that now the asset is in strong hands and is ready for the advancement, at certain point. So coming back to the Alessia's scenario here where, we stop and we maybe consolidate in whatever shape, way, or form Bitcoin can do this, or going even higher and then consolidating higher. That would suggest that with the money, the profit taking that takes place in the Bitcoin, the money could go to other assets, the ones that institutions will see as undervalued at this point of time. And they've been accumulating those assets for quite some time already. So it feels like we're going into a possible next stage of the crypto advance. And obviously, looking at dollar looks very weak. So this whole formation right here, the most exciting rally in the middle, does not produce the overcoming of the supply on the way down. And now we are starting the new decline again with the increased supply signature, and then supply comes again. It doesn't have to be very strong at this point because the trend has been established and a lot of institutions have sold prior to this point. But we see some selling that happens, during the consolidation and out of it. So the dollar is still weak, which is obviously very favorable, for Bitcoin and other assets.
So here we see the crypto futures. So Bitcoin is still leading, but we have finally seen more breadth in the crypto market. So the structure of these indexes is very similar. The Bitcoin index is still better on the comparative strength. We are backing up on the resistance, while the other indexes, like the DeFi index and mid-cap, are in a downsloping structure. But what I really like here to highlight is the fact that the DeFi index in the last 3 days is holding much better than Bitcoin and the rest of the market. And this behavior really reminds me of what has happened on the Nasdaq in the last days, where we have seen all of a sudden some outperformance, at least locally. I want to stress the fact that this index is made of two kinds of assets. Strong leaders that were unbelievable leaders in the previous bull run, and then a lot of new cryptos that have been listed just a few days before the September selling. So they have suffered what Bruce calls the IPO disease, and we will see many examples today. So your final remarks for this chart, Roman?
Yeah, I really like the DeFi because of the characteristics that you've just mentioned. I think this would be my next place where, my attention on whatever assets they have there, I want to have a look at those and hopefully we will. Very good look on all of the different cap sizes with Bitcoin, obviously not necessarily having exhaustion at this point. It still looks very bullish and it still suggests, potential continuation, but there is more value now in other assets, and we should recognize that. And there is structurally the spots where the assets are just coming out of the formations, like DeFi, after the sign of strength and the backing up action, whereas Bitcoin already overextended.
So this is our very interesting chart. I'm in this position, and look at this was a 100 bagger in the previous bull run, and now we see a backing up action followed by a breakout. So very interesting Wyckoff and spot. Roman, what do you think about this chart?
Yeah, and again, it comes to the idea of positioning within the structure. We were discussing a lot, this particular consolidation in Bitcoin. So if you would be thinking about like where is uh, this other asset is in terms of the structure. So we have some kind of sign of strength, LPS, and then we are breaking out of the trading range. So for Bitcoin, that happened here, and you could see the whole run. So you're starting to think, okay, if this asset is starting to outperform, starting to show some kind of sign of strength, this would mean that there's going to be a continuation of the uptrend. after some showings of the institutional buying coming into this position. So you better positioned in the asset like this where there is still so much more potential to the upside. And granted, Bitcoin again, still could go up even from here.
Yes, yes, so of course. Very interesting scenario. If Bitcoin goes up and also the altcoin market goes up. Be very interesting. So very similar perspective here. We see an asset that has been listed just in October, but we already can see a very interesting accumulation structure, a possible last point of support, and now we are trying to break out. Roman?
Yes, so I agree. The same type of the idea, the same type of the scenario where we are, around sign of strength, backing up action. We see the elements of buying, and again, compare it to the Bitcoin in a little bit better structural spot.
VeChain, multi-year consolidation. This asset, look at the logarithmic scale that we have on the top. So on this chart, we have Bitcoin on a arithmetic scale, and then VeChain on a logarithmic scale. So this is that is a massive move that we see on that major sign of strength. Now we are just on the breaking up action, and it's acting good. I think that for the long term, I think this could be a very interesting candidate.
Yeah, so it has a much larger structure, which is interesting, and it showed what in other assets I don't see in other cryptos is this. So out of the corvid low, it shows some strength already. And it was actually outperforming Bitcoin at that point of time. Some supply comes in that stops the price from moving further up, and we are consolidating on the background of the Bitcoin strength. So now this is a very interesting asset because after the prior leadership and new causality, we're coming in and we're starting to show some elements of strength, or at least the movement of the price. So this is probably one of the most interesting charts that I see in today's session.
And the major sign of strength here is already a 10x move. So the whole consolidation could have a lot of potential.
Absolutely. All right.
And we have talked about the IPO disease in the crypto market. Well, the same mechanism happens in the crypto market. And so basically here we see an APO, an ICO, and look at what happened on this chart. Basically, price collapses. And after that, the composite man is accumulating at lower prices. And lately, Uniswap has a very shallow reaction, while Bitcoin is having more pronounced reaction. So I think that there is some rotation in play here, man.
Yeah, again, everything kind of looks similar right now in terms of where all of the assets are in comparison to Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin obviously was outperforming, and all of the other assets, they were not participating fully in this advance of the Bitcoin. So it's almost like the Bitcoin is like a leadership flagship of the bull market, and it shows like that a lot of things are happening right now, and you just need to wait for the correct spots. But Alessio, this is a very interesting spot. I mean, like, look how flat this consolidation is around the resistance, suggesting some strength.
Great chart, and I want to just be more precise here. This was not an ICO for this asset, but the dynamics is the same. So,
all right. Okay, well, Alessio, thank you so much for putting this together. Always good to be here and to analyze together with all of you guys, the cryptocurrencies. And as Alessio has mentioned, please leave us your questions under the video. The last 2 weeks of this year, the Christmas week and the New Year week, we're going to be going through the questions and having some Q&A sessions. So make sure that you ask us your questions, or email us at wyckoffAssociates@gmail.com. Send us your charts if you would like, and we could do that as well. Alessia, thank you so much.
Thank you, Roman.